Ladies and gentlemen of the internet, welcome to another episode of the Rotoworld Football Podcast. I am Josh Norris here, joined now by Ian Hartitz. Ian, how's everything?
Great day to be great, Josh.
Great day to be great. Ian, you've worked here for a couple weeks now. I know you've been writing for a long time about football. Well, not too long. You're like 26 or 27, not to put your age out there. But you haven't been doing this like on-camera video stuff, podcast, in studio. How's it been? Like, anything surprise you about it so far?
I did kind of the webcam game a good amount, like from the comfort of my, room and all that. But no, having to get all dressed up with no logos and everything has been different. But having such a gracious and kind host like yourself makes it easy.
Well, I mean, no, I'd probably put you in a position to fail and not to succeed. I'll tell you this, Ian, and Chris and everyone in the control room can tell you this. I was horrific when I started doing this, like really bad. You and Daigle are already so much better than I was. I had this like idea that when you showed up on camera that you had to have this script in your head and it to be perfect and everything like that. But then you kind of realize that you just want to make it conversational and you have all the information, so you should be comfortable and confident in what you say. And like you're pulling that off, and so is Daigle. Like it's really impressive for me to sit over here and see that.
I think it's just like being back in school with the presentation. You don't want to be memorizing a script because the second something goes wrong, you fall apart. So just be prepared, have a good time, and we're sitting here talking about fantasy football. I don't think it's the most.
No,
it's not something to get too worked up about.
Well, it's not rocket scientists, and it's not the biggest thing to be nervous about either.
For sure.
Oh, okay, so today's show schedule, we're going to start with the Thursday night game, preview that. Then we're going to hit on Ian's, one of your like 6,000 columns each week. The injury dashboard, the very important roster changes basically based on injuries and lineups for each team, a number of them that are very important. And then we'll hit on Nick Menzio later in the show with his vital starts and sits, his bold predictions for those players later on. But again, let's start with this Thursday night game. It's the Philadelphia Eagles at the Green Bay Packers. Green Bay Packers, 3-0 and 4.5-point favorites in this one with a total of 45. It's interesting, though, even with being 3-0, the Packers, I wouldn't say that they have been good this year. Like, they haven't played their best football yet.
No, I mean, it's been their offense in particular. Their defense has been awesome. Yair Alexander looking like next great cornerback. We've seen Preston Smith, Darius Smith really get a lot of pressure off the edge. So good things there. But this Matt LaFleur offense has been,
very Matt LaFleur-like.
Yeah, pretty bad. I mean, they're bottom 8 in the league in net yards per pass attempt and yards per carry. Not really consistently getting going either way. And that Denver game last week, I mean, they scored 27 points, but pretty fluky when you look at it. Their first touchdown was Aaron Rodgers' token, gets the offsides, immediately hits a chunk play, touchdown. And their other two, like the drive started, I think, at the Denver 37, like the Denver 5. So we have not seen them consistently move the ball downfield against anyone this season.
Yeah, and this is a team that in the past has gone by the identity of Aaron Rodgers, even when healthy, even when injured. Now the identity has been how great their defense has played. And it makes sense. They've gotten faster. They've gotten more explosive. They've gotten more aggressive on defense. And that has allowed them to lead on 83% of their snaps so far this season. I'm just waiting until the offense catches up to the defense. And in a lot of ways, I think and it's kind of like the Bucs, we kind of had too many expectations, too much optimism for this offense because we drafted Geronimo Allison, we drafted MVS quite high, and other pieces around there. And I mean, it kind of goes back to Matt LaFleur last year with the Titans. He wasn't able to find that identity until like week 12 or week 13. It's hopefully not going to take that long so far for the Packers, but you can tell he's not exactly sure, like splitting snaps between Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones, getting Geronimo not involved at all. Like, who knows? If there is going to be a good Packers season this year, they will figure this out in the next 3 weeks, I think.
Yeah, and maybe we did talk about this in the preseason. Like, it took Matt LaFleur 12 weeks last season to decide that, hey, the offense should go through Derrick Henry. And we're seeing the same thing happen with Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams. To Jamal Williams' credit, like, he's been playing pretty well, especially in kind of the screen game and, working on his pass downs. But, yeah, Williams played 61% of offensive snaps last week. Jones was only 39, and he got out-touched as well. So, I mean, I think Jones will still kind of be the lead back more weeks than not, but he had those 2 short touchdowns last week. Not the worst guy to sell high on.
What about in the perspective of them playing the Philadelphia Eagles, which is a get-right game for Devontae Adams, a get-right game for Aaron Rodgers? Because we talked about last week with Mike Evans going against the Philadelphia Eagles. No, excuse me, that was a different game. But we talked about it where the Eagles give up a lot of points in their secondary, and Davante Adams can have a Mike Evans-like week this week.
Exactly. I mean, Mike Evans in week 3 is going to be Davante Adams in week 4. So the Eagles did not address their cornerback position after getting roasted by pretty much every number one every number one wide receiver last season. And it made sense because they were so injured for the second half of last year. But now we're seeing that same situation play out. Jalen Mills remains on the PUP with a foot injury. Now Ronald Darby hasn't practiced all week with a hamstring injury. Again, this was a group that really hasn't earned the benefit of the doubt, and now they're once again banged up. Perfect get-right spot for Davante Adams.
Whereas Aaron Rodgers might not have played to the best of his ability, I actually think Carson Wentz maybe has outplayed him so far this season. Carson Wentz has had some rocky moments, but you can expect that from someone who has that playmaker mentality, who always thinks on 3rd and longs, whatever situation it is, that he can hit big plays down the field. We also look at his lack of weapons that he's had last week and maybe even heading into this week. I think he can still carry this offense, and he has shown that in moments. I just think it's kind of a capped offense without Alshon Jeffrey, who might be back this week, Deshaun Jackson, Dallas Goedert, so on and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, his stat line was really deceiving last week. They had something like 7 drops as a team. Perfectly placed ball to Dallas Goedert in the end zone that inexplicably went off his hands. And then even at the end of the game, I mean, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, that deep ball, that's something that we'd like to see him come down with considering his skill set. So Carson Wentz has been doing everything he needs to be doing. It's looking like another Nelson Aguilar week, at least for the time being. Eagles wide receivers remain very banged up. Expecting Alshon Jeffrey to be back after missing last week. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside should be out there too, even though he was limited or didn't practice on Monday with a heel injury. D-Jax will still be sidelined, but big thing here is we got Aguilar in the slot against 36-year-old Tyron Williams. Expecting Jeffrey to be the main guy that has to deal with Jair Alexander.
It's one of those where we kind of thought that this might be an NFC Championship game.
Yeah.
Prior to the season, we thought that both these teams were going to be absolutely fantastic, and it, again, feels like neither have really hit their final form yet. And maybe one does come out of this, or both can, in the playoffs. I will say Miles Sanders played a season-low 34% of the snaps in week 3, but it was interesting, because of their lack of playmakers, they lined him up out wide left on the first snap going empty, and then out wide on the right side on the second snap. I think that goes into the game planning prior to the game, because they knew that they just didn't have enough offensive firepower. So it'd be interesting to see how they do fit him in and mesh him in just when the game flow is either positive, negative, or neutral. Because he has ability, he's just fumbled away 2 opportunities and even more than that so far this season.
Yeah, I really thought last week was going to be when he kind of really seized control of the backfield, but after the 2 fumbles, they had to get Jordan Howard involved, and Jordan Howard was running well to his credit. But yeah, I mean, right now, excuse me, it was 36% snaps for Sproles, 34% Miles, and 33% Jordan Howard last week. Full-blown 3-back committee. I still think this is Sanders' backfield by the halfway point of the season, but for the next few weeks, I mean, he's impossible to trust in fantasy.
So we know how much injuries shake up teams as we go through the season. We know how much these change up your fantasy football lineup. So now let's hit on Ian Hartitz's injury dashboard, which is up on Rotoworld right now. It's a fantastic resource. Let's start with the New York Giants. Saquon Barkley has a high ankle sprain, most likely this super wide timetable of 4 to 8 weeks. The Giants are at home against Washington. Now without Saquon, it's Daniel Jones' team. But in the backfield, and picking up 48 touches in 2.5 games from Saquon Barkley, is now going to be Wayne Gallman, who we all feel like is a limited player.
Yeah, for sure. And it seems like I think Saquon's going to be on the kind of high end of that timeline. I've seen some beat writers say, after a week 11 bye, maybe he comes back week 12. But Wayne Gallman, for now, we already saw them working out a lot of running backs yesterday.
Yeah, the likes of Fozzie Whitaker,
I was about to say
Benny Cunningham. I mean, just extremely good talents.
Zach Zenner, I heard Cameron Artis-Payne get theorized a few times. So just, your real who's who of backup NFL running backs. But right now, it's Wayne Gallman. I mean, he worked. The only other running back they had active last week was Elijah Penny, and he only played 3 snaps. I mean, Gallman was really involved. But with that said, Gallman played 41 snaps, only had 5 carries on those snaps and 1 target. So I think we're just going to see a ton of Danny Dimes throwing the ball, which is probably the best thing for this offense. And, we want to chase the opportunity, even if we all kind of agree Gallman isn't that talented of a player. We have seen not very talented running backs be fine fantasy assets. My kind of concern is that if Daniel Jones is going to be this quarterback who's okay with tucking the ball and running, and he wants to throw the ball downfield a lot, how much extra targets is that going to be for Gallman, who's not really going to demand the same type of touches that Saquon did?
Yeah, like I said, 48 touches in 2.5 games for Saquon. That's a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a boatload. I totally agree with you that I think now, and it's interesting, right? Because, there's this debate for almost 2 years of, well, the Giants selected a running back early in the draft rather than a quarterback. And what would the offense have looked like? What would the team have looked like if they went the opposite direction? Now we find out.
Let's see what happens.
Now we see, and we know that they didn't win football games as Saquon is their best player on offense. So now we'll see what's going to happen with Daniel Jones as their best player on offense, possibly to Evan Ingram, to Sterling Shepard, who looked great in his return to the lineup last week. We know that Josh Norman is facing off against them, just one of the corners, but teams have attacked Josh Norman so far, and it's been glowing results.
Oh, 100%. I mean, Norman really has not been a cornerback you need to avoid for the better part of the last few years, and especially in this matchup, like either way, he does not move inside, like he will not play the slot, and that's where Sterling Shepard's been. So good things from Ingram and Sterling still to come.
I wrote up Daniel Jones' performance in the ranking the rookies on Rotoworld, so go and check that out. Highly, highly impressive. Like even in, situations where there were receivers covered down the field, he was able to hit everything underneath. Yeah. He hit number of 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9s that other quarterbacks would get off the field in those situations. He was able to continue drives, which was very meaningful and impactful for the Giants team. I
want to pump the brakes a little bit because I think the Buccaneers defense, did outperform kind of their ability in the first 2 weeks of the year. So I don't want to crown Danny Jones just yet, but hey, Redskins this week, I mean, he can definitely go off in this matchup before they get the Vikings and Patriots the following 2 weeks.
The Panthers have already ruled out Cam Newton. First, it was reported as a possible Liz Frank injury. I believe he told people it was that. Now, I don't even know if you saw this, but right before we started recording, Tiffany Blackman of the NFL Network confirmed it's just a mid-foot sprain. Both are, again, to the midfoot. I don't know if you even know what Liz Frank did. I had to Google it. I know a lot of people or a lot of athletes go through them, and they're 4 to 8 week injuries.
Yeah.
This seems like an injury that happened during the preseason, right? And because Cam is Cam, he wanted to play through it. He wanted to not spend time on the bench when the regular season started. Because the play that he re-aggravated it wasn't anything notable. Like he just kind of slid out of bounds and that was it. Now we get Kyle Allen, and Kyle Allen played great. We talked about defenses against the Arizona Cardinals, maybe the worst defense in the NFL, but it's not like the Texans defense who he faces this week is that much better.
Yeah, and Cam deserves so much credit for being as tough as he is. I mean, he played through that shoulder injury last year, tried to play through his foot injury this year. It was good to see them kind of sit him down with how much flack he was getting when he wasn't playing well. So it is just funny, though, how, like last week, up until Thursday, Friday, Ron Rivera still would not really name Kyle Allen the starting quarterback. Now he goes out, throws 4 touchdowns, and Ron Rivera goes, Cam's health, #1 priority. We want to wait as long as possible. So it was interesting to see that flip, but not particularly surprising how good the offense looked. I mean, in the preseason, when we weren't worried about Cam's foot, we were worried about his shoulder, but we eased those concerns with the idea that, okay, he can just dump it off to Christian McCaffrey, Curtis Samuel, DJ Moore, 3 ballers, all these guys can make plays. That's what we saw happen with Kyle Allen. And yes, it was the Cardinals secondary, one of the worst secondaries in the league.
For sure.
Texans aren't too far removed from being in that conversation themselves, so I think at least for this week, we can confidently fire up Kyle Allen again.
Yeah, if the Panthers' offensive line can slow down J.J. Watt, if they can slow down Whitney Merciless, who played very well to start the season, then they'll be able to throw downfield. And Kyle Allen looked comfortable. I mean, we talked about it, though. Like, no one is more confident really coming into from a backup position to a starter position than Kyle Allen, who was a former big-time recruit. I'm not going to say a failed college career, but maybe didn't reach expectations, but he still extremely believes in his ability. And so he's not afraid to throw downfield to Curtis Samuel like we saw a lot in week 3, excuse me. So, yeah, I'm excited to see this experiment, and then if the team keeps winning, which is important to keep Ron Rivera and Marty Herner, whoever else involved, then I think Cam does come. Like, I don't think Cam's going to be shut down for the whole season.
No, I think he'll be back. That is interesting to hear. It's not being diagnosed as a Liz Frank injury.
And he's not getting surgery either.
Okay.
So, all right, next up is Julian Edelman with the New England Patriots. Obviously, he's dealing with a chest injury. This is an odd one, right, Nick? Right, Ian? Excuse me, we're going to get to Nick later. Because Edelman suffered this injury during the game, but x-rays were negative. It's been like super vague. And I know Ian Rappaport reported that he'll be good and isn't dealing with a major injury, but we haven't really gotten new information on Edelman, who is now very much needed in this Patriots offense.
Yeah, most reports have been good on it. Like, it doesn't seem like he's going to miss an extended period of time, but week 4 at least certainly seems to be up in the air, and they really need him in this matchup with how, their offensive line has taken so many hits at this point. Left tackle Isaiah Wynn, center David Andrews. Now, James Devlin, their fullback's out. So they're going to need to adjust on the fly, and they need guys like Edelman, guys like James White, who can, create quickly and let Brady get the ball out of his hands fast. Edelman does have the best matchup this week, too, or whoever ends up lining in the slot. It'll be Jacoby Myers, preseason superstar, if Edelman's ultimately sidelined. But Tre'Davious White, Bills' lockdown cornerback, he sticks the outside. So, the slot is where you want to attack the Bills, if anywhere. But we talked about this with Tyler Boyd last week. Like, this Bills secondary in general is just really, really good. They've only allowed 184 passing yards per game since week 1 last season. I mean, at home, I'm kind of surprised to see the Patriots as 7-point road favorites. I mean, I know they're a juggernaut, best point differential in the league and all that, but at the same time, pretty much a cakewalk schedule to start the season. And now they got to go into Buffalo to face, whatever your opinion is on Josh Allen, fine, but this defense is really, really good.
Yeah, 2-3-0 teams here. And the Bills defense, like you said, is fantastic. And Sean McDermott kind of emulated the defense that he helped build in Carolina. Like, he has his fast linebackers. He had his upfield penetrators on the defensive line. He has playmakers in the secondary. And it only took him a few years to do it.
All 3 levels, so much talent.
And they're already there. And I think they figured out the offense. At all times, it's not perfect. It's not crisp. It's not clean because Josh Allen's your quarterback.
Right.
But he's this playmaker who, even when he drops his eyes, even when he doesn't look comfortable outside of structure, he's a better athlete than a lot of people on the field. And he believes in himself just enough that he can find Cole Beasley or a wide receiver on the comeback or Dawson Knox now, who had a great debut last week, that it's working. Even without Devin Singletary, even with Frank Gore in the backfield, it's working. And again, he's going to make that 1 or 2 mistakes each and every game. But it's gotten to the point where I don't think those 1 or 2 mistakes tank this team because it's finally so talented they can overcome those Josh Allen mistakes.
They got talent around him now, and you have to defend every square inch of the field with Allen a quarterback because he's just as likely to try to throw a 60-yard pass down the sideline as he is to take off up the middle with that speed he's got. So, whole lot of things to worry about when Buffalo Bills are on offense.
If you want more of a breakdown of Josh Allen's game, be sure to check out Chris Sims Unbuttoned, his Wednesday episode with the coolest man at NBC, Paul Burmeister. Let's be real here. It's not one of us up here. He does a deep dive on every single game. And I know he loved Josh Allen coming to the league. I know he has a lot of glowing things to say about Josh Allen's performance so far this season. So again, that's the Chris Sims Unbuttoned podcast, and go and check that out. All right. Another one on the injury dashboard is T.Y. Hilton. He left with a quad injury after his touchdown, I believe, and the celebration. He still got the celebration on the field, which is very important.
Got to.
The Colts face the Oakland Raiders, who may have peaked in week 1. Let's be real. Yeah. What do we think of T.Y. Hilton's availability this week? And if not, they're already missing Devin Funchess, so who might replace him?
So T.Y., they asked him yesterday what he thinks about this week, and he pretty much said if he can be out there, he'll be out there, up to the doctors. So looking like a game-time decision. He's a tough guy, though. I think, gun to my head, he suits up. We'll see. And he has had a history of playing pretty well when he's been banged up throughout his career. I mean, I went back through since he came in the league. He's had 15 games where he's been listed as questionable, played through it. In those games, he's averaged 5.5 receptions, 87 yards, 0.2 touchdowns. Pretty much what we're used to seeing. Particularly recently, I mean, he's had 130 yards or more in 5 of his last 10 games where he was listed as questionable on the injury report. So not every injury is created equal, but if you got him in season long and he's active for a home spot against a Raiders secondary that's been eviscerated by pretty much every wide receiver they faced this season, fire him up. And I'm going to have some T.Y. Exposure, and he should have lower ownership and DFS as well. If he is out, though, I think Paris Campbell is the guy we got to look at to take over because, you watch this guy get the ball. He's always like a shoestring tackle away from taking it the distance, it seems like. It's just been so crowded right now in this run-heavy offense to see any of Campbell, Deion Kane, Zach Pascal, Chester Rogers. They're all playing between like 40 and 55% of the snaps, so just not enough kind of opportunity for any one of them to emerge as a realistic option when you got Ebron and Doyle also stealing targets. So I don't know if Hilton plays at any of these guys or, super high floor options or even really have a floor. But without him, give me, Campbell and Deion Kane.
Paris Campbell's one of those players, obviously a rookie, who needs an opportunity. And if he gets that opportunity, maybe he can find himself into a full-time role, right?
Yeah.
And this might be it. Like, we don't know if T.Y.'s out at the time of this recording, but if he plays over 50% of the snaps, if he plays 75% of the snaps and does something with that, because we know Frank Reich loves him. Like, he talked about in the preseason as a true number 1 for a team, which is tough to believe for a player coming out of Ohio State who just ran crossers and drag routes his entire time.
I was about to say, I mean, his hype in the preseason was
massive.
Wild. And then he had the hamstring injury, I believe.
Yep.
So it was just, got interrupted, but he's back and healthy and ready to go.
Ian, it's that time of the show where we try to see how many words you can say in 1 minute with your quick hit injury news from across the league.
All right, Ito Smith is in the concussion protocol. We saw Devontae Freeman play season-high 90% snaps last week because of that. Note Brian Hill and Quadra Allison were inactive, so not expecting Freeman to have this workhorse 3-down role if Ito is out again. Bills running back Devin Singletary still day-to-day with a hamstring. We saw Frank Gore, TJ Yeldon have a 60-40 snap split in his absence. Michael Gallup expected to miss another week with his knee injury. We saw Devin Smith play 90% snaps last week in his absence. Jimmy Graham playing through the pain, groin and quad. Huge candidate for limited snaps. Has not had a catch since week 1. Do not play him. Stud Colts free safety Malik Hooker is going to miss a good amount of time with a knee injury. Great news for Darren Waller, the biggest target hog tight end in the league. Damian Williams still dealing with his knee injury. LaShawn McCoy, ankle, re-aggravated it last week. I think we see a committee approach if either one of them are active. If not, though, fire up Darrell Williams as potential featured back in this Chiefs offense. Rashad Penny hurt his hamstring last Friday in practice. Did not see him Sunday. Chris Carson, the guy keeps fumbling it, but if Penny can't get right this week, I think Carson gets another chance as the workhorse. And finally, Adam Schefter this morning said that it'd be an upset if Jalen Ramsey plays this Sunday. He was sick on Monday. He's supposed to report this week, but it's still a situation we need to watch.
Time now to bring in Nick Menzio for his bold starts and sits of the week, and you can check out all of the names. These are just a few in his full column, which is up on Rotoworld right now. Nick, let's start with a rookie out in Seattle. DK Metcalf is facing the Arizona Cardinals. 19 targets, 9 receptions, 217 yards, and 1 touchdown from DK Metcalf so far this season. After kind of a down week last week, you are interested in starting him this week.
Yeah, down week last week, only caught, I think it was like 3 of 7 targets. His catch rate over the last 2 weeks is pretty lacking. He's only caught 5 of 13 targets the last 2 weeks. Scored a touchdown 2 weeks ago, but held out of the end zone for the first time last week against the Saints in that surprising home beatdown led by Teddy Bridgewater on the Saints side. But I like this spot going to Metcalf. He's top 9 in air yards among receivers. The Cardinals just allowed a 52-yard catch and run touchdown to DJ Moore last week. Didn't even really touch him on the play. Curtis Samuel went 5 catches for 53 yards and a touchdown on 7 targets against this Arizona defense last week. I think they're playing actually better than people think against receivers, the Cardinals, that is. They're just getting shredded by tight ends, but I still like this spot for Metcalf. I think Russell Wilson is infinitely better than Kyle Allen, obviously. I don't think the Seahawks are going to have any problem hanging points on the board in this one, and they're going to be severely up in pace. I mean, the Seahawks are 31st in pace, and the Cardinals are number 1 in pace, so that should lead to a couple extra possessions for the Seahawks. So I'm running Metcalf out there.
Yeah, Nick, you mentioned the pace factor, which is obviously key here to potentially get the Seahawks some more offensive plays. We've already kind of seen Metcalf have this decent floor, at least 6 targets in every game this season. My question, though, is could we actually see the Seahawks offense trend a little more pass-heavy after seeing Russ get to 50 attempts last week? I know it wasn't an ideal game script, but if the run game's going to keep not working, give the ball to Russ.
Yeah, I definitely agree on your points there. If Carson's going to keep fumbling the ball, they can't give it to him as much as they would obviously like, but Rashad Penny probably coming back this week. I don't know. I bet they'll run the ball more. It'll be more 50-50 split, but if this Cardinals offense can start putting balls in the end zone, I think this game could pop off a little bit.
DK's been fun to watch and go back and watch on Game Pass because he's one of those players that was questioned a lot coming into the league, right? And a lot of it was his agility scores, his 3-cone, his short shuttle. And I actually think the Seahawks understand those questions. Like, just because he's performing well so far doesn't mean those questions weren't correct to ask, because Nick, they're using him exactly how he was used at Ole Miss. He's glued to the left side of the field.
Yeah.
Everything is run off these vertical routes. He's using his athleticism in jump ball situations. And then they're actually adding this little wrinkle where they're putting Will Dissly out all the way in the left side, moving DK into the slot, and then allowing him to run these vertical routes out of the slot too. So they're using him correctly. And too often we see, players with some limitations. I'm not saying DK Metcalf is a limited player, but he's just not perfect in every area. And I just love how Seattle's using him. So I'm sure you've seen the same exact thing.
Yeah, like you said, they put him in the slot. That's how he scored his last touchdown against the Steelers in week 2. He beat a safety over the top with a game-winning touchdown. So you're exactly correct.
Yeah, Arizona might be a get-right spot for basically everyone, even Chris Carson, if he can hold the ball. All right, the next name, Nick, You know, I love this because I'm biased. I think Rotoworld is pretty good at giving fantasy advice and analysis and news. Nick, it might not be better than being a year or two ahead on a player. and that's what we were on with Rex Burkhead. That's a little spin for you out there. Rex Burkhead at the Buffalo Bills this week. He's one of your favorite starts of the week.
Yeah, I mean, I like him in this spot. He played 73% of the snaps last week. Obviously, James White was gone from that game, was with his wife when they were given birth to a child. I mean, I expect him to be back this week, so that Burkhead snaps are going to take a hit, but he parlayed that 73% snap share into 17 touches, 69 yards, and 1 touchdown last week. I don't expect him to play as much, but Sonny Michel's just been flat out bad. Outside of that Miami game, he has 24 carries for 25 yards and a touchdown plunge. I mean, they need to start dialing back his snaps, giving some of these to Burkhead, maybe a Burkhead-White tandem in this spot, hitting Julian Edelman in the slot. The Bills do a pretty good job of limiting big plays on the outside, so I think this offense could go through Burkhead, White, and Edelman in this spot against the zone defense that really gives you whatever you want in the middle of the field. So I like Burkhead a lot as an RB2-3 flex play in this spot. Not many sexy projected shootouts in week 4, so I think you can pay off in this spot.
Yeah, for his snap rate to be that high last week, yes, James White was out, but 3 touchdown home favorite, and Sonny Michel had a career low 9 touches, 22% snaps. It seems like we could see more 2 running back sets from the Patriots moving forward because James Devlin hit IR. Nick, how do you kind of balance the potential for maybe Rex to get used more with Devlin out, and see the Patriots kind of embrace these 3 wide receiver, 2 running back formations that might, get the most talent on the field for them versus will they be able to keep running the ball effectively with all these injuries?
Yeah, I think we're all seeing the same thing. I mean, we're seeing Michel just running into the back of the offensive line, just getting tackled for short gains. Whenever he's on the field, it's so one-dimensional. He's ran 10 pass routes and has 0 targets through 3 games. I mean, whenever he's in the game, he's running the ball, or they're throwing it out to the outside. So it's just a super one-dimensional offense whenever Michel's in the game, and we've seen against this Bills defense that they allow catches of running backs. I mean, Joe Mixon caught a touchdown last week against them, had 95 yards. Le'Veon Bell caught a touchdown against them in week 1. Saquon Barkley had over 100 yards and a touchdown in week 2. So they give up points to running backs. So I like this a lot.
37 touches for Rex Burkhead so far this season. I did double check that just to make sure that was right because I've had dreams of that happening through 3 weeks, and I love seeing it in reality. Let's stick with that game. Nick, we talked earlier in the show with Ian and his dashboard about Julian Edelman and how it's kind of up in the air right now if he's going to play. With that said, and when this podcast is recording midday on Wednesday, you actually aren't in favor of starting Phillip Dorsett against Buffalo despite having a touchdown, I believe, in every single game so far this season. 3 touchdowns so far. Yeah,
he didn't score in the week 2 one, caught 2 in the opener. Played less than 50% of the snaps in week 2. So and he's still the overall wide receiver 16 to date in half PPR leagues. And that includes that 3-catch, 39 yards week 2 against Dolphins. Played 92% of the snaps last week against the Jets. But I'm just operating with the impression that Edelman's going to play in this game. I don't think like anyone said, his chest injury isn't serious. I think they just kept him out last week because they were rolling the Jets. This game's a little bit more important, 3-0 teams in the AFC East. So I expect Dorsett to kick back outside more. He still ran over 47% of his routes in the slot, which is good for this spot. But like I said earlier, I just expect this offense to go through Edelman if he's playing Burkhead and James White in this spot. And I'm kind of avoiding Josh Gordon and Phillip Dorsett against Coach Sean McDermott's defense that really stamps out big plays on the outside.
Yeah, and it's kind of seemed like that the plays Dorsett has made this year, like he's getting open on well-designed plays that, he's got separation from defenders. Brady puts the ball on him. He's come down with it. We haven't seen, the same type of 50-50 balls that Josh Gordon's getting and, types of plays that I think we can at least expect, consistent targets from that Edelman's getting in the slot. So even if Phillip Dorsett kind of might have these boomer bust weeks as a part of the Patriots offense, probably won't have the highest floor.
Right. And then the 41.5-point total in this game is the 3rd lowest of the week. So it's just, I'm not chasing the guys on the outside in this spot, really.
It's one of those games, I'm sure we'll talk about it in tomorrow's episode with the game previews, but it has a lot of layers to it, doesn't it, Nick? One, it's the Patriots versus the Bills. Probably the best Bills team we've seen in quite some time. Hopefully they're finally going to contend in that division where no one has. But you're also possibly missing Edelman. It's Sony Michel not running as well. It's not having the fullback to lead block for him. So it's one of those games to me that Bill Belichick, Josh McDaniels, Tom Brady might have a specific game plan for and a different way of attacking it that we're just might not be predictable. So it'll be interesting to see what that is. All right, Nick, let's close it out with Tyron Williams against the Indianapolis Colts. It's starting to look like, Nick Menzio, that the Oakland Raiders peaked in week 1. And that is not so good for the rest of the season for a lot of these players. Tyron Williams had a great week 1, but so far this season, 17 targets, 14 receptions, 180 yards. But he does have 3 touchdowns to his name so far.
Yeah, he's caught a touchdown in all 3 games. Started his Raiders career. Obviously, that streak's not going to continue much longer. He can't keep up that kind of pace. He leads the team in air yards, though, but looks like he's settling in as the number 2 option behind Darren Waller. Maybe even fading to number 3 if the Raiders get Josh Jacobs more involved in the pass game like they want to do. And I just love this spot for Waller. The Colts just got lit up by Austin Hooper for 6 catches, 66 yards, and 2 touchdowns last week. They're 28th in fantasy points allowed to tight ends, but they really do well against outside receivers. They allowed the 2nd fewest pass plays of 40-plus yards last season, 5th fewest pass plays of 20-plus yards. They're number 8 in fantasy points allowed to wideouts. The Colts just control the ball so well. Matt Ryan and the Falcons ran 6 possessions last week. That's unheard of in today's NFL. That's just so few. And the Colts face the 4th fewest plays per game, and the Raiders run the 6th fewest plays. So something's got to give here. It's just hard to see Williams getting volume in this spot. And I'm not going to be chasing touchdowns every week with him.
Low pace, like you said, tough matchup against a defense that consistently limits big plays. And I think we're going to see more and more as the season goes on. Tyron Williams and Derek Carr is not a good match at all. I don't know if there is a wide receiver that's a good match with Derek Carr necessarily, but this is one of the league's better field stretchers, and he's stuck with a quarterback that won't throw the ball downfield consistently. Right. So, if people are still believing that Tyrell is going to be this consistent receiver, 3 touchdowns in 3 games, I'm trying to sell high on him if possible.
I'm just waiting for the 2024 season when Derek Carr and Jamison Crowder are teammates. It's Jamison Crowder, Trey Quinn, and Cole Beasley with Derek Carr throwing to them. I think that would work. Again,
don't forget Christian Kirk.
Yeah, there we go. Oh my gosh, we're just going to roll our eyes over here. Okay, that was Nick Menzio starts at column again. He breaks groupthink. It's a really great column that doesn't mention a lot of the names start-wise and sit-wise that the rest of the industry does. So go and check that out on Rotoworld. Again, go and check out Ian's injury dashboard column, and it's updated throughout the week. And I also want to point you to our season pass as rankings, projections, custom scoring for your league. Everything that you need, go and check out the season pass on Rotoworld's premium side. And that's it. That's it for us. We'll be back actually here tomorrow with game previews with John Daigle, Hayden Winks, Patrick Doherty. I'm going through their names and looking at their faces in my brain at the same time. It's dangerous. But until then, all of you, thanks so much for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe, hit that follow button, leave a rating and review. We'll talk to y'all soon. See ya.